Welcome, folks, to my Why is there so many California wildfires in the state of California? This is my introduction here to the video. I did a lot of work into this video. If you like it, please give this video a thumbs up and share it out. And if you want to subscribe and ring the bell for future updates, I'd much appreciate it. Here's a slideshow of all the fires that has been going on in the state of California this year. It has burned over 4 million acres as of the making of this video. There's a lot of reasons why there's fires in the state of California, and most of them can be prevented with fire lines if they were ever approved to put fire lines in. But naturally, fires used to happen all the time, and there's a reason why humans, interfered with it the way nature used to work and control itself, and humans got involved in it and put the laws in place for this, a law for this, a law for that, and we ended up with the mess that we have today when it comes to the fires. I'm not worried about any virus or anything in the state of California. Clearly, our biggest threat is fire here. Not so much floods, but fire, because as you can see, over 4 million acres burned, and this has been going on for over 2 months now. There's just got to be a way to prevent the fires, at least be able to have the upper hand, and the only way you could do that is by fire lines, not by how many firemen you got, how much equipment you got. You got to have the fire lines in place in case of a fire. Now, then again, you guys, this ain't based mostly on my opinion of what should happen. I've worked in the woods for over 34 years. I know how fires work. I know how trees burn. And that's what we did, was thinning. We thinned trees. I personally, might offend some of you, have cut down and harvested over 100,000 trees in my logging career. I have over 24,000 hours running a chainsaw out in the woods, and I was a volunteer fireman at once. So what I'm basing this on is my experience, because that's what we did. We thinned the woods to save the woods and to have fire lines cut and have the trees thinned out where they wouldn't catch fires from one tree to another tree. You have to have that spacing between the trees so fires don't jump from the top of one tree to another tree, which they call the crowns. They're jumping from a crown to a crown. If you have that much material laying down below the trees on the ground, 4 or 5 feet high, it will not deteriorate. It will take decades, 30, 40, 50 years for a 6-foot high pile of logs laying down at the base of trees to rot away. That's why all that has to be removed. You can't just leave it and try to protect every little bit of wildlife and then end up destroying all the wildlife and the forest. Again, this is based on experience here before we get into the actual clippings and everything of why this is going on in California. That's just my experience here I'm putting out there. Hope I don't offend anybody, and I hope you like this video. And if you do, please share it out. Thanks for watching. The importance of fire lines. You have to have your fire lines in place, 200, 300-foot paths swaths through the forest with no material left. No trees, no grass, no nothing. It looks bad, I understand that, but it has to be done. You get those fire lines in place, then the next season when you hire back your seasonal firefighters that CAL FIRE keeps and the Forest Service keeps, this is in California, you have those folks go out, men and women, with weed eaters, and they weed all the grass down along the fire lines, and they use their Pulaskis, which is like a hoe pick on one end and an axe on the other end, and they hoe it up like you would in a garden. And you keep those clear so that when a fire happens, you attack the fire with everything you got, all your manpower that's there. But you know down the road, 2 miles, 3 miles away, you already have a fire line cut. And if the fire, you still can't control it, you go to your fire line. And you're there already on the fire waiting, and you light a fire to burn back toward the fire that's coming, and you stopped it in that one contained area. It's pretty simple to figure it out, but there's so many laws preventing this. It's just unreal in the state of California. Out of all the years logging, we did no good by bringing up all our firefighting stuff, like our water pumpers, our water truck, skidders with blades, which are like cats, they could push fire lines, and just dump them off there. We got to the job. We figured out if a fire happened, how would we put it out? We had that in place. And we had many fires. Never once did a fire get out of control. It was contained within 10 minutes, 15 minutes every single time And I've done this season after season after season. But if you're not prepared, there's no way you could control a fire. This video is just to show why the fires happen in the state of California, and we're going to get into the laws about that in a second. I'm not putting down firefighters. I'm not putting down city firemen. But regular force firefighters, they respond to a fire. They don't prevent fires. They respond to a fire. And this fire in the state of California here that's been going on, these fires have burned over 4 million acres and have cost billions of dollars. It would only take a couple million to cut permanent fire lines forever, for generations to be able to enjoy the forest. Instead, there's just so many environmentalists against touching the forest, animal rights, killing animals, thinking you're taking their homes away. The laws are just unreal. Before the gold rush in the 1850s, California forests burned naturally every few decades from lightning strikes or from Native American tribes burning the forest. In the fall, around into September, October, they would actually light the forest on fire and the valleys on fire to get rid of the invaded species of plants that came there that weren't naturally there, like too much sagebrush and small trees. It would burn it off, and the next year and the year after, the grasses would come back more, which means more animals would come, which they had better hunting. And that's how it went forever. The forests used to run themselves for thousands of years fine, until men and women got involved with laws saying you could do this, you can't do that. In the state of California, you can't even harvest big pine trees off your property without getting a permit. You cannot drive through dried up creek beds where the water would run through your property without getting in trouble. These are some of California laws that goes on. Now, after the Native Americans were doing that, then the ranchers started doing that. In the early 1900s too, they would just burn off their land, which would give more grasses for the animals next year. This is part of the reason why the buffalo population was so big, and that was due to Native Americans, because they burned the forests down, burned their valleys down when the grasses. Now, the fires you're thinking burning wasn't that big, but it burned a little bit every year, made grasses come back more, and that's why there was so many millions of head of buffaloes. Faced with the worst summer fire season in 10 years, this was a long time ago, Governor Jerry Brown is proposing broad new changes to California logging rules that would allow landowners to cut larger trees and build temporary roads without obtaining a permit, as a way to thin more forests across the state. Like I said, there's still so many laws in California. To even do anything on your property, it's unreal. Let alone think you're going to cut one of your trees down in your yard. This proposal, which has the support of the timber industry but is being opposed by more than a dozen environmental groups, would represent one of the most significant changes to the state's timber harvesting rules in the past 45 years. They actually tried to change it. They got a few laws passed. It hurried up some of the where you could cut your trees up by a little bit instead of waiting years to be able to get a permit to do something if they approved it. Now it was a little bit quicker, but again, it was just so many people was against it. Environmentalists, animal rights, didn't want nothing done. It's very hard to get any of this done on your property or the state's land. Under Brown's proposal, private landowners would be able to cut trees up to 36 inches in diameter on the butt, chest high, up from the current 26 inches on property of 300 acres or less, without getting a timber harvest permit from the state, as long as their purpose was to thin forests to reduce fire risk. They also would be able to build roads up to 600 feet long without getting a permit, as long as they were repaired and replanted them. Now, what purpose is that? To thin out everything and then replant it. You had to replant it. You're defeating the purpose by having to replant it. I've seen it where we had skid trails where you skidded the wood down. You had to replant the trails with natural grass and sagebrush. Wood, and left mostly larger, healthier trees without those fires. Today's forests are much more dense, with up to 10 times as many trees per acre in some places. The dense brush and increased numbers of small spiny trees causes fire to burn much hotter now and climb more easier into the tops of the trees, creating massive blazes that burn for months. This is how a fire spreads. If you have ground cover that's piled up dead wood under trees, it carries the fire up the tree. It's very hard for a fire to go up a tree when there's nothing underneath to keep lifting the flames up. Just watch some YouTube videos on how fast a Christmas tree could burn, and you'll see what happens in the forest when it lights from the bottom. Trees, pine trees could burn even being green. Further, when landowners get a timber harvest permit to do logging on their property, which has been state law since the 1970s, they are required to draw up a plan that shows where they plan to cut, how many trees they want to remove, and what kinds of slopes and which species, like endangered salmon or other wildlife, will be affected. That plan is a public document and subject of a public hearing. Yes, to do this on your own property. So no landowner wants to go through all these hurdles just to clean up his property so a fire can't come through, so he doesn't do it. In California, we got a weed abatement, it's called. You got to have it cleared 15 feet to 50 feet around any structures on your property. If you don't keep those weeds down or grass down real low to the ground, they will actually auction up, put it up for a bid, somebody to come in there and do it and add it on your taxes for the year. But in the forest, nope, they don't have to do it. Timber harvest permit, which can be hundreds of pages and cost tens of thousands of dollars for a professional forester to prepare, also must be approved by the State Department of Fish and Wildlife and the State Water Resources Control Board, who look at the logging impacts on erosion, streams, and wildlife, and try to reduce the impact of logging on the environment. But when a forest fire happens, they could come in with bulldozers, track machines to push in lines all through the forest without getting no permits. Isn't that something? Within 24 hours, they're in there tearing up the ground. But you can't get it to stop a fire before it happens. But anyways, folks, this is all my experience working in the woods most of my life being out there. And that's what I did, was thin trees to prevent wildfires and to help improve the forest. 90% of all wildfires in the U.S. are caused by humans. But even the 10% of naturally occurring fires ignited from a lightning strike, for example, may not be able to burn as they should. Why did man ever have to get involved in this? Just really messed it up. But this is the reason why you have these California wildfires. And to give you a little bit of thought to think about, there's been over 4 million acres burned. If there was 25 trees per acre, do the math on that. That is 100 million trees burned. That is enough wood to build a couple cities. And to think about if one animal only died per acre, squirrels, raccoons, mountain lions, whatever, and that's 4 million animals died. Not counting all the insects, not counting the wood, not counting all the Native American archaeological sites that has been burned, not counting the back in the gold rush days, all the mining little camps that was hid in cabins are all burned and gone. Just a lot of history burned. All buildings from way back when that nobody even knows about burned and gone. All these animals are gone, so now you got all the deer that fled. Mountain lions can't run that far, so I fear a lot of them passed on. Bears, same way. Turkeys, all these animals died. Now they're all up north where they don't naturally be at this time of year. No reason to come back down. There's no grass. Now with the cats up there and that much deer, it's just going to be a big feeding frenzy. There's going to be a big, large shortage of deer. Now with all these dead trees standing up there, the government's not going to get rid of them all this year. In our lifetime, they would never be all removed. So now you got even a worse fire hazard next year and the year after, when you got all these dead standing trees and they'll start falling over. It's going to be way worse than it was this year, the possibility of a fire. Will you see anything done next year? Nope. Watch and see. The state's plan is hire more resources. We need more money for more resources. That's not it. You got to have these fire lines in place to protect the forest, just like you do around your house. You thin all the weeds, the grass distance away from your house to protect your house. It needs to be done both ways, and the government needs to do it the right way. They interfered, now they messed up all the forests. But anyways, folks, hope you enjoyed this video. Didn't mean to bring up how many animals would die and all that, but this is the truth of it all. Please take care out there. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. And if you want to subscribe and ring the bell, I appreciate it. Please share this video. Thanks.